So my name is Devon, as he said, and I co-founded a project that we originally called the Decentralized Library of Alexandria 4.5 years ago. 2 years ago at DWeb, Sir Tim stood up and said, "Great project, terrible name, it's too much of a mouthful. You really need to change it." So we took that advice, and we realized that we really have a protocol and an application, and so we gave the simple name, Alexandria, to the application, and the spec we have called Open Index Protocol. So to start things off, I wanted to ask, what is your favorite indexed digital public space? So I've got a few qualifiers there, so I want to be clear what they are. By public, I think everyone knows what I mean by that. By digital, I just mean not physical. So I don't necessarily mean the internet or the web, maybe both. And by indexed, I just mean searchable. Does anybody have a favorite indexed digital public space? Reddit? Reddit? Maybe. Okay. But here's the question. Is Reddit truly public? Because how do you get to the information? You get to the information over, you use a public directory, yes, DNS, and you use basically a public protocol to be able to call the server that Reddit is at and know what you're going to get back. But is that server in control of the public, or is it control of a private company? And because every single part of the web, whether it's an app that we're using or whether it's a website that we're using, every single part of it has to live somewhere and has to be paid for by someone, it's really not public, it's private. So we really have no public space. And that's really why we set out to build this project. We had a hard time explaining that for a long time, but this became the perfect analogy for what we're actually building here. So to do so, what we first did is we recognized that a blockchain is a public database of signed and time-stamped statements, okay? The Bitcoin blockchain, the first one, those statements are transactions. So the result of this is a triple accounting ledger where the person that sends it knows what change happened, the person that receives it knows what change happened, and the whole world can see it for the sake of transparency. In Flow, this is another blockchain that was started in 2013, any piece of arbitrary data can be attached to this, and it's quite explicitly allowed. And so as a result, when you put all of these public statements on these transactions together, you've really got a public space because it's just as permissionless as Bitcoin. And the only consensus is proof of work. So we don't look at what the subject matter going into the chain is before we decide whether it's going to get confirmed or not. It's just proof of work. And then what we did with Open Index Protocol is we added a specification on top that could result in a searchable space of signed transactional statements about publicly available data. So this is a public space, and as a result can't be censored, but it's indexable. So you can search it, you can browse it. So what were the features and the characteristics that we were looking for in order to build this? First, it has to be absolutely decentralized. Second, it needs to have an immutable history. No matter what goes into it, it needs to stay in it. No matter who is upset by it or disagrees with it, it needs to stay there for the sake of transparency. File persistence. We need to absolutely make sure that when a file goes into it, it's there forever. It's there forever. That's really, really important. Okay, and we did that by kind of subsidizing it through the rules of the spec. Rather than making sure that someone could constantly pay for it, we subsidize it, and we can get into that another time. It's defensible. It has to be defensible against even state-level actors, right? Otherwise, it's not truly decentralized. It needs to be permissionless, where anyone can contribute, either contribute the content into it or contribute to front ends around it or contribute to buying some of the content inside of it, et cetera, without anyone being able to say no. It needs to create a level playing field, and we can get into why, but that's a really important point. It needs to be salutary, and I'm not going to explain exactly what that means. Amy's going to introduce the idea in a little bit, but really what it means is sustainable for the businesses that are working in this ecosystem, so that they know that if they're putting work in, they're going to get paid and they can keep on doing their work. This is a really important aspect of it. And it needs to be anti-fragile, and anti-fragile feels like a buzzword, but it does actually have a technical definition. It means when you throw disorder at something, it actually gets stronger. It's not just resilient against disorder. It means when you throw random, I don't want to say random, that's got too specific of a term, but when you throw disorder at something, it makes it stronger. The human body is a great example of that. The internet is a great example of that. The web isn't necessarily, and that might be why we're trying to improve it now. So our approach, very simply, is to take a file and add it to a peer-to-peer network, just like, or a peer-to-peer file transfer network, just like IPFS, obviously, and we get back the locator address, the hash. We then add that with a bunch of other metadata about it. The descriptive information, say if you're on SoundCloud or YouTube, all that information that is used to make something findable, that's useful. You attach it directly to the file. We also attach to it any commercial preferences. So if it's a song and someone wants to sell it for 1 cent for a listen and $1 for a purchase, they put that information in there too, as well as the payment addresses they can get paid at. And what's really important here is that it's totally interoperable payment addresses. So you can get paid in Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin or Bitcoin Lightning Network or whatever else. It's really important that it's not tied to just one cryptocurrency. That wouldn't work. And last, we combine all that information, we put it all together, and we sign it cryptographically with a private key, and we send it off to a blockchain. So let me just show you that really, really quick here. So Alice is adding her file first. She's actually interacting directly with a web server. In most cases, this is what's going to be involved, where a person is interacting with a web server, because guess what? There's 3 billion people on the web and very few people on any decentralized network so far. So Alice could just run these 4 different pieces of software, I don't know where this is up here, on her own computer to be a pure peer-to-peer node, but she doesn't have to. She can interact with a server that's running those, and it's most likely that that's exactly what's going to happen. So she uploads her file first, and that gives her back the hash that locates that file. She puts that with all of her descriptive information into this particular network, and both start to propagate throughout. Because it's been indexed into the blockchain, it's also starting to get intentionally pinned by stores on the network. Without having to pay for it, they're required to do so. It makes its way across the network, and it makes its way to another platform where it could be discovered. And Bob over here discovers this new piece of information in the index, and he says, this is interesting to me. And so he grabs the file itself, and he downloads that, and he watches it, and he's like, this is really great, I'm going to send a tip to whoever created it. So he sends some money over Bitcoin back through that same platform that he's on, and eventually it makes its way over to Alice. So that's great when it's only Alice and Bob involved. Many times, however, a middleman is not just, certainly not necessary, but very, very useful. Middlemen can do useful things for the market. So if they add value to the market, they should be able to get something out of it. So let's look at 2 possible middlemen that can be involved here. First of all, if an individual, like someone that is an Amazon affiliate, just goes around and shares links to things, if they think that's a good link or a good product or whatever in front of their audience and that results in a sale, they get a cut. So this is inspired by that basic concept. Charlie here is an influencer where he shares a link on Twitter or Facebook or wherever the heck it is, and Bob sees that link. That's what leads him to buy this thing. He gets a cut for having done so. Likewise, every once in a while, that platform, they actually suggested this piece of content using all the stuff that they know about whatever end user and what they've consumed and stuff like that. This is the way the web works right now. You want to suggest things that people are going to like. And so if they suggest something that Bob actually likes and he gets it, he's going to get a cut of that. So it's actually very simple in the blockchain. This is what our very, very first artifact, or one of our very first artifacts, looked like. It's a cat video, of course. That's what they all have to be. But it's very basic. It's just descriptive information at the top that helps you be able to find it, locator information that can find the actual file. We started this project before IPFS existed, so you can see in the locator information there, it's actually a BitTorrent IPFS, or a BitTorrent magnet link. So it just kind of shows how extensible that is, in that we could switch from transport network to transport network, and they can stay persistent within it. And then at the bottom, we just kind of describe whatever payment information is necessary, payment addresses they can receive it, and then we sign it, and then we send it off to the chain. Now that's expanded quite a bit since then. As we can kind of see, I've got a simple app here that just browses it, and it kind of shows how the artifact data has stayed very similar, where it's description, and then where the file is itself, and then sign it at the end. But as you can see, this is slightly different artifact data. This isn't just a cat video. This is actually research data that Caltech has been accumulating for the past 15 years. So they're one of our newest partners on Open Index Protocol capturing this kind of stuff. We're very excited about that. Here's a very, very simple application just for downloading stuff. It's literally grabbing it direct from the IPFS network, but I want to get into that real quick. We can show it to you later. Just wanted to show you one of our other partners is Medici. Medici is the wholly owned subsidiary of Overstock, and they're interested in trying to catalog the world's property records because most of it don't have their property records formally recognized, and they think there's $100 trillion+ available for them to leverage if they can do so. So I'd like to have Amy come up and talk about the incentive models that allow everyone to make money in this system.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm going to talk to you about some other things that Open Index Protocol can do, because really the spec was designed to handle all kinds of information. And so my favorite things that it can do are movies, music, videos, the kinds of things that these companies do. But why in the world would they want to use this? Because we know that it's not enough that OIP prevents censorship and is wildly more efficient. It has to have financial incentive to drive adoption. So I'm going to talk with you about the incentive structure of the OIP system and the multi-stakeholder model that creates competition at both the application layer for platforms like these and incentive at the protocol layer. So as everyone here today knows, there are serious problems with commercial media distribution. The current system is fractured, and the business models built upon it act as walled gardens that restrict our access to information and content. We may chase an artist from one platform to another, but then our favorite smart playlist algorithm isn't on that platform. Or when we want to watch a movie, we have to remember, is it on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu, et cetera, et cetera. And what's interesting is that we see these same patterns when we look at the history of the internet. Before the web, AOL, Prodigy, CompuServe, these were walled garden proprietary stacks. If I was an AOL user and you were a CompuServe user, we couldn't interact. It was HTTP that gave us this place where we could all connect. It was the open web that we all have such fond memories about. And it worked because anyone could participate. It was a permissionless system. To get involved, users simply needed to run a web server. But this wasn't a scalable solution. Everyone that wants to put up a video or a recipe wasn't going to spin up a server. And so services were built to handle the complex back-end stuff for users to help the web scale. And wow, did it scale. The World Wide Web is the best example of the importance of competition at the application layer. One protocol with more than 1 billion applications built on it. But as the web grew, it grew more and more centralized. And users don't control their own stuff because they don't control their own servers. Creators also run into these walls when they're trying to distribute their content in this fractured system. So I, as a creator right now, I have to have an independent relationship with every distribution channel I work with. I have to surrender control of my content to them, and they dictate to me the terms of use and pricing that I can have. And in exchange, all they do is distribute my content inside their one walled garden system. With Open Index Protocol, I can publish a single copy of my content, and any front-end service can display and sell it according to my terms of use. It could be a major service, like one of the ones you were looking at the beginning. It could be you on your WordPress blog. It could be somebody you follow in social media. Any of those links that result in a sale, I'm going to get paid directly. And anybody that helped facilitate that sale is also going to get paid. And so what this means as a content creator is that there are all kinds of new ways that I can monetize my content. I can display it in social media for a micropayment. I can allow terms of use for iterative use of my content or sampling of my content. I retain full control of my terms of use. And because the current system is so wildly inefficient, let's think about the vast network, this vast infrastructure that's been built by private companies, right, that are hosting the current content. Think about the catalogs of Apple Music and Spotify. How much are the same, and yet they're not sharing resources? Not only is this bad for the platform because it's wasteful and expensive, but it's bad for users because companies are competing for their business based on what's in their catalog, not the quality of the service that they're giving to their users. And as we all here know, the current model was monetized with ads and data mining, which is a losing proposition for everyone involved. I love this quote from Jerry Lerner's TED Talk. I think it sums it up beautifully. We cannot have a society in which if two people wish to communicate, the only way that can happen is if it's financed by a third person who wishes to manipulate them. So has anyone here struggled in the current system? Have you been deplatformed, demonetized? Has something you wanted to watch been removed from a platform? Yeah? Are you worried about these issues? In the 4 years that we've been working on building this, there has been this growing sense that people are ready to make the leap to something new. And we are all gathered here because we know that we're in the midst of this generational format shift. The future will be decentralized. But when it comes to content distribution in particular, we believe that we're in the midst of a generational format shift. I'm not talking about an intro format shift, moving from MP3 to FLAC or something like that. I'm talking about the kind of generational format shift that only happens every generation. And this time, we're moving from physical distribution to digital distribution. This format shift started 20 years ago with Napster, but it hasn't been completed because there hasn't been a standard that was open and flexible enough that it was capable of meeting the needs of the whole industry. And so we're still in the murky middle of that shift, and the business side of things really reflects this. What's astonishing to me is that in some distribution channels, physical sales still make up as much as 50%. When's the last time somebody bought some physical media? No one? Right. Crazy. Companies like Netflix, Spotify, and YouTube have shown us that there is great demand for digital content. But the problems with the current system are reaching a fever pitch, and we are standing on the precipice. We are standing at that moment when giant companies will fall and visionary companies will rise based on how they react. So let's look at how the value flows through the open index protocol system. As we know, blockchain has changed the economics and incentive structures of these systems. A couple of years ago, Joel Monegro introduced this concept of Fad Protocols. And what he meant by this is that in the previous generation of protocols, because there was no value transmission at the application layer, all of the opportunity for value capture happened at the application layer. And that's why we're in this walled garden system that we're in today. Did I say the word wrong? There's no value transmission at the protocol layer. And so all of the value capture happens at the application layer. In what he called Fad Protocols, like Bitcoin, he said that the real work is happening at the protocol layer. And that the application layer can just sort of add these value add services. And so there's so much more opportunity in a Fad protocol model for value capture at the protocol layer. But what we've been seeing since he wrote this is that there's this repeat of the walled garden problem going on. Because if you build a protocol and you build an application upon it, but no one else has incentive to build on that protocol, then you just have another walled garden. And there's this really interesting thing about how if you use a specific token to enforce that relationship of having to use that protocol to add value to it, well, that's not going to work at scale because users are just going to hold one or two reserved tokens. So what we know now, since Joel wrote that article, is that what's going to maintain token value is the velocity of the token, not users holding it. So what we're introducing today is a Salutary protocol model. It creates opportunity for value capture at both the application and protocol layers. Salutary protocol systems maximize efficiency by separating the subjective work from the objective work and empowering the marketplace of users to define their own unique combination of services and pricing. It separates all the objective work into the protocol layer. So these are things that are going to become essentially fungible commodities, things like file storage and file distribution, securing the blockchain, these kinds of things. Fungible commodities that are objectively measured. And the things at the application layer are subjective. So these are things like the quality of the user experience, the quality of the discovery and curation, and the filtering lists. And this is what's so exciting because it flips the model on its head. So now the platforms have to compete for my business based on the quality of the service that they're offering me. Lightning Network is another example of a salutary protocol. Lightning Network creates incentive for competition at the application layer between channel operators. Channel operators will compete to serve different parts of the market by offering a variety of options like settlement reliability, blockchain settlement frequency, and transaction amount size. And they can also act as market makers to bridge funds if a node goes offline. And this is how Open Index Protocol creates incentive for competition at the application layer for Alexandria's business. So at the application layer, we'll serve as a platform and as influencers, and we'll also support the services of the network at the protocol layer, the file mining of the index, and the file storage and distribution. And this is a very quick flowchart of the way that the revenue streams work at the application layer. I'm just throwing it up there for the video audience to push pause and check it out. I don't have time to walk through it right now. And this is our wiki. You can see it at oip.wiki, and it has tons more information for you if you want to get started building on the spec. Thank you all so much.
We have 2.5 minutes for questions if there's one or two out there. No? Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.